All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the first episode of On the Contrary, a show where we're going to be giving you the most outside the box thoughts that you'll find in the world of sports media and daily fantasy sports media. It's going to be a recurring theme that we're going to do. We're not sure about the show schedule moving forward, but for the first one, we're going big. The goal is to be different, to give some different viewpoints on a lot of the stuff that's being regurgitated across the world that you're seeing both on websites and YouTube streams, just like ours. But to do that, to accomplish that, I have two big guests to join this show. The number one player in the world, the founder of our site, Mr. Alex Baker, better known to you guys as Awesemo, is up with me. How are you doing this day, Alex?
Hey, great to be here. Really excited to do this stream with you and Evan. Week two, I'm really excited for because now we have a little bit of information compared to week one, and I'm ready to take that and run with it.
All right, and then we, of course, as Alex mentioned, we do have one of the preeminent voices in fantasy football and honestly regular football at this point, in terms of being a respected prognosticator. He's the senior editor at Roto World, and his matchups column is really one of the Bibles of the industry. It's something I've read for years. I'm sure a lot of you guys have as well. Evan Silva, how are you doing on this fine Saturday, sir?
I'm doing really well. I'm pretty relaxed, but I'm also at the same time a little nervous and excited to be able to talk some ball with Osimo. This is not an opportunity that that comes across my table very often. I have talked to some great players. I do a show with Mr. Tuttle, '05 every Friday. It's called the Swolecast, and Mr. Tuttle is a great player. I've done a couple of just random shows with CSU Ram and Al Smiz. But in terms of, like I've never done a show with like Kandia or, Empire Maker and, Osimo is like in that category, in that tier. And so when Osimo told me that, he was like, he wanted to kind of do a show with me, I was like, man, that would be an incredible opportunity. And, there was almost no way that I was going to pass that up. So I'm, appreciative and grateful to be here, and I just can't wait. I'm here to ask Osimo questions. I'm gonna give, certainly my football takes, but I want to learn about Osimo's process. I want to pick his brain. This dude's one of the smartest one of the top 5 smartest dudes in the industry, and I want to get smarter, just by picking his brain.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely for me been a very helpful experience to learn at the hands of Alex over the last 9 months or so. I've been working, I think, at this point with you guys. And Alex is definitely a great brain. But one thing people out there might not know is you guys are actually also friends in real life. You've hung out a bunch of times. You've had maybe a few too many late nights together.
Yeah.
I guess tell the people a little bit, like, how'd you guys become friends? How'd you meet?
Well, we met at the Roto Grinders party last year in Nashville, and the one thing I didn't realize about Evan is he challenged me to foosball, and I thought, oh, that's gonna be fun, like we're just gonna play some bar games or something. But then all of a sudden, like when we start playing this game, he's just like locked in, like super competitive, and I lost $20, so I've
It
been
must have
wanting
been
to
really
make
hard
that
for you on
back
that
ever
bank account.
since.
Bankroll suffering. We might not get paid this week after that $20 loss, Evan, so I don't appreciate that too much. Actually, some interesting news right now in the chat, which might be a first good thing to talk about because this is going to be one of my takes for the show, which again, we're going to discuss a lot of the contrarian viewpoints that a lot of people aren't talking about industry wide. Josh Gordon is out, apparently, for unknown reasons currently. If anybody
Well,
in the chat has any sort of background on that, my first contrarian thought was I love Tyrod Taylor this week, and I think that Browns attack is in a fantastic spot. A lot of air yards downfield, kind of a similar passing profile to Ryan Fitzpatrick in week one. And they showed they were willing to air it out. So I liked Landry and Gordon, and definitely actually had a little Gordon in my first lineups. What do you guys think about this news? And I guess what do you think about that Browns matchup versus New Orleans? Alex, we'll hit you first. You're the boss.
Alright, thanks. Well, the Browns team total is only 20, so I'm not like crazy about it. But I mean, with Gordon out, you gotta think Jarvis Landry is gonna get a ton of targets. The only problem with Landry is I'm not too big on his touchdown potential because I haven't seen a lot of touchdowns in the predictions. So I'm a little hesitant because I think he's going to get a lot of targets, but maybe not put it in the end zone. Evan, what do you think about that?
Well, the first thing, so I know that the team totals are always set, conservatively by the sports books. So, but one thing that we've noticed like over the years is that games that are played in the Superdome, like they've earned the reputation of being considered like the Coors Field of the NFL. I mean, sometimes we can have like, 70, 80 point shootouts at the Superdome. The upside is very big. Are the Browns capable of scoring in that manner? That's a legitimate question. First of all, I'm an hour behind on news because I've been, dealing with, some just regular life, normal life stuff, and then, getting the show set up. What is the source of Josh Gordon being out? Who is reporting that, first of all?
It just hit DK Live's news service, so I'm pretty sure it's everywhere at this point. Yeah, it didn't give a report name, but it actually might have been Rappaport. I'm not sure. I already closed the notification, unfortunately. But yeah, it is. I trust DK Live whenever they actually put out a push notification, so I'm pretty sure that's legit.
No, definitely. I don't think that they would run with anything that's fake. I want to see it like on Roto World or Schefter reported or something like that. Anyways, I'll be looking for that. Josh Gordon is a perimeter receiver. He only had 3 targets in the first game. So, Jarvis Landry was already locked in. I mean, he had 15 targets in the first game. He had the second most air yards in the entire NFL. All right, so the Browns have actually ruled out Josh Gordon.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, Jarvis Landry was already going to be an awesome play, number one, but this definitely increases his upside. We're looking further down the depth chart. Their other receivers that they use are Rashard Higgins and Antonio Callaway. And Antonio Callaway, if you play like preseason DFS, he had a monster first game. He's a super talented guy. Like reminds me of Santonio Holmes of the old Steelers. Really, really talented player. But those will become their top 3. And then you also have to look at David Njoku, who did see 7 targets last week. That was second most on the team. He didn't do anything with them. He had 2 drops in the second half. He had finished with 13 yards. But taking 3 targets away from the offense, based on week 1 is not necessarily significant. But it definitely does draw more attention still to the other guys. And, Jarvis Landry is already a great play. David Njoku benefits. And then, sleepers become Antonio Callaway and Rashard Higgins.
Yeah, I agree there. Callaway is a guy, if anybody watched Hard Knocks, I think they saw enough Antonio Callaway. Obviously, the Hard Knocks bias is something we try to avoid in general because you could fall in love with anybody there, apparently, besides Hugh Jackson, I guess. But Callaway definitely shows the deep ball upside that you want. But volume, I'm with you there. I think the volume is going to be there for Landry. I loved him before this. I think you have to like him more. Besides the ownership, our ownership projections, by the way, are out. For Osmo.com premium members, and we do have a promo code for this as well. Promo code Contrary will get you 1 week free of our projections and our ownership projections, all the stuff you need to know, grades straight from Osmo, and a premium article from Osmo that comes out tomorrow. So go join promo code Contrary now. But yeah, Gordon, I think, and Njoku, I think, is also a very smart play. A lot of targets there already in the first week. He might be a little bit. I'm with you. That could be a track meet very fast for Cleveland.
Teams just when they go to the Superdome, they tend to score above expectation. So it definitely raises. I mean, it lowers Tyrod Taylor a little bit, but it raises the other guys in the passing game. I think one guy who I was very disappointed last week in his usage was Duke Johnson. Barely got the ball, 6 touches. He did get 6 targets, but he only had 1 reception. It just seems like Tyrod Taylor right now only has eyes for Jarvis Landry. And one thing that I'm a big believer in and is data backed over the years is wide receiver or quarterback pass catcher connections. And Tyrod Taylor clearly has that with Jarvis Landry.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So that's my contrarian take because I was already loading up on the Browns and we'll have to adjust my Josh Gordon exposure accordingly. Alex, why don't we get one of your thoughts? I know one thing we've talked about too, actually, let's kind of touch on this before we dig too deep into the show. Alex, your approach to Evans is a little bit different. Obviously, you're more matchup agnostic. You tend to look for volume. You tend to look for the core repeatable data. How would you say, based on what you know of Evan, your approach differentiates, and why do you think the way that you view it might work better for you?
Um, well, it's really tough. I'm trying to feel Evan out a little bit, so I don't really know his process as much right now. But obviously, Evan is a complete expert about all the players, and my forte is really in kind of analyzing statistics and creating like models. So I think that's kind of the interesting thing is we come up with different answers with our different like expertise.
Has there been anything that you guys have talked about before where you've noticed, oh, Evan was right about this, and maybe I need to think about it differently, or vice versa?
Well, just talking about week one, I was kind of telling him some of the guys I was playing, and Evan was like, "Man, you're dumb." That's actually why I wanted to bring him on the show so I could avoid that mistake in week two.
No, and we talked about what was it? Was it in the playoffs last year? You were playing the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
We were playing was it the Titans and the Chiefs? And I
Mhm.
was like, "Yo, you need to hit Derrick Henry, man." He exploded. I mean, it's a very small sample size, but Osimo and I working together has been, very successful. Like, also this is the way that I see it. Osimo's really good at playing DFS, and you have to understand that playing DFS is different from knowing, every player in the NFL and knowing, about like just the league and football. It's really very different. This is something that I've talked about this with Eric Crane, and but Osimo is like on a different level from everyone else, but he's really good at like math and just playing the game, and he plays every sport. He's really good at NBA. I mean, when I play NBA, at the end of the night, like I'm looking up at, oh, who won the tournaments tonight, and it's freaking awesome. Oh, with all the top 10 lineups. You know what I'm saying? So he's really good at just playing DFS. And now, if we can combine his ability to play DFS with maybe a little bit improved, just a small edge is all it takes, man. Just a very small edge in terms of just knowing what might happen in the game based on like personnel or scheme or coaching. I mean, we could really maybe reach the next level.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I come from a
That's
more
my
sport analyst background like you do, Evan, and I tend to believe in the matchups and some of the stuff too. And a lot of the retraining I've had since coming on board here was kind of thinking about straight data, looking at the core statistics, which Alex and Tom and some of our other people behind the scenes have developed and really keyed in on as being valuable. And I too believe like a marriage of the two is sort of the ideal, but to get there with the research and all of that on both sides of it can be tough. And I think that's where your column comes in handy if you kind of combine those two things. I mean, the amount of research you put in for that is insane. How much work do you put in on a given week on the Roto World column?
I mean, it just takes the entire week. I started on Saturday, like I've already started on week 3. Actually, I started it on Thursday night this week. I've already started on week 3. I'll be able to bang out by Monday night, like 6 games independently, and then I have to watch the other 10 for the rest of the day on Monday. And then rest of the week is just like, looking up stats and writing the article. It takes a long time. But I mean, to me, it's like, it's fun. It's a challenge, and, but just to be able to learn from someone who really knows how to play the game and win at the game is, very important to me. And that's why this was such a privilege to be able to talk to Osimo.
So what's your big question? I mean, I'm sure you guys have talked offline enough, but what's one question that you would have for Alex that you think the people watching this would really take to heart? Like, what's one thing you've always kind of been curious about, or a way that he views things that you've always wanted to know that people might get use out of?
One thing that I've started to gravitate away from is cornerback wide receiver matchups. Mm-hmm. And it used to be like a big thing to me like 3-4 years ago, but it has resulted in a lot of failures. Just placing too much emphasis on it, because for a number of reasons. Like, first of all, the cornerbacks don't shadow the wide receivers on every play, and really for the best receivers in the NFL, all it takes is 1 or 2 big plays. That's all it takes. Whether it be a dude lines up in the slot and the outside the boundary corner, doesn't chase him into the slot, or hey, Xavier Rhodes misses 2 plays because he tweaks his knee, and where do you think the quarterback is going on that play? To his best receiver, who isn't being covered by Xavier Rhodes, who is being covered by Xavier Rhodes' backup, who's probably the 4th cornerback, because they already have, their 2 and their 3 out there in different positions. So that's one thing I'm starting to kind of gravitate away from. Alex, do you look at cornerback wide receiver matchups at all?
Well, I think it's a really interesting topic of discussion. I think the error that people make when evaluating these cornerback matchups is they're not taking into account the fact that a guy like Antonio Brown, who's like the wide receiver 1, he's
Right,
facing the
right.
toughest matchup on the opposing team every single week.
Yep.
So the marginal difference between a really good cornerback and a merely like cornerback 1 might not be as big a difference as people expect. To be honest, like I should probably look at it more, if anything.
I don't think you should, dude.
No, okay. Yeah,
I would shy away from it. It really has, and the perfect example of that. And look, this is a 1-game sample. It's very anecdotal, but the best example of that was Antonio Brown in the playoffs against the Jaguars, because he had like literally the worst matchup that you can draw up, and he was banged up, which that was really, that was scary for sure. And I know you play in the playoffs because we talked about that, but he was going up against the Jaguars and Jalen Ramsey, and he just wrecked. Look, the dude is Jerry Rice. He is our Jerry Rice, and playing him in supposedly bad matchups can really like give you an edge, because that the cornerback concern, he was so low owned, man. He was like single digit percent owned in that
yeah.
matchup. And I, being the idiot that I am, didn't play him either.
Dude, you're triggering this PTSD for me now. I remember like those reports came out like Antonio Brown is limited, so I pulled all my exposure from him. But what I failed to take into account is like, man, teams just like straight up lie with their injury reporting. They're trying to like deceive everyone, like not like the readers. They're trying to deceive the other teams. So you got to take everything with a little bit of grain of salt. Not over adjust one way or the other.
I think too there is a difference between good volume and bad volume in the playoffs in particular. I mean, NBA it's more pronounced, but you want to go with the guys who are going to get the minutes, and in football you want to go with the guys who are going to get the touches, who they need to be involved. And I think that's sort of where you would go to Antonio Brown. Whereas like in a regular NFL week, I would say they're probably not going to feed Brown as much as they did in that playoff game, just because it's not worth the risk.
Right. I think that the smartest point that Osmo made there was, you want to take everything with a grain of salt, and you want to not overweight anything. Okay. So just think about like, and what is an algorithm? What is like a model, and like a predictive model that's good? What are the contents of that? It might have 6 to 12 predictive factors that it uses, and it doesn't necessarily overweight any of those. Okay. So just think about that in your mind. If you've ever seen like a good model that is that has the ability to predict what is going to happen, it doesn't like, just because of one reason, it doesn't like shoot a guy to the bottom. You know what I'm saying? Like it accounts for all 12 of the factors, let's say. And so if you are using like a good model, or if you have like a very, just nuanced brain where you're able to, take into account a bunch of different factors, as opposed to just shooting a guy to the bottom or shooting a guy to the top because of this one factor that you like, you're being more objective in your outlook. And I think that was a really smart point that Alex made.
Yep, I agree. So Alex,
but as humans, we are prone to shooting a guy to the bottom or shooting a guy to the top.
Yeah, I mean, the recency bias thing is something which Alex in particular has coached against a lot of times. It's something we try to advocate against in every live stream, just because, it is a part of the picture, but it is, you're trying to look at a more longer term set of data, a larger sample size and all of that. And I think the same thing applies too. I mean, if it's a bad coverage matchup, sure, but the guy's getting 16 targets a game, I think, or he's got a good quarterback who can deliver the ball and is always accurate. That matters more probably. Alex, since you're getting all the praise right now, let's put you on the hot seat. Give me one of your spiciest takes, your spiciest contrarian take. You got to fit the brand of the show, Alex. What are you going to give us for this?
All right, so I have a few takes that I'm planning to give out. The spiciest one is that I think people are overrating James Conner. Uh,
Ooh.
that's what I mean. It's spicy. You gotta hear me out though. So
I don't know. I don't want to hear it.
yeah, I'm gonna talk you off James Conner, and he's gonna get like another 40-point game, and you're gonna lose all your money. But that's just what I believe. All right, so let me give you my piece of evidence here. The Steelers ran 50 pass plays last week, and James Conner ran 29 routes, and he blocked in 15 pass plays. So I just really like people are like, oh, he's gonna be the next Bell, but he's not running enough routes to really get there. And I think that his salary is to the point where he's a good play, but I don't know if he's my top play of the week. I think he's getting a little over projected by some people.
Evan, what do you think about that? You blushed pretty hard there initially.
I mean, 29 routes is good for a running back, but the 15 pass blocks is a lot. That's a lot. That might have been the most in the NFL in week 1. Now, they did play in a game that was OT, so they just had more snaps in general. I mean, the Browns, I can't remember how many the Steelers ran, but the Browns ran 89 freaking plays last week, which is absurd. I mean, there were teams that were in the 50s last week. I can't remember what the Steelers ran. I think it was in the low 80s. But all right, so James Conner he got 36 touches in week 1. He's at home. He's a favorite. He's facing the Chiefs. They're terrible in defense in every aspect. I think the Steelers are going to score a lot of points. So I love James Conner. He's my number 2 RB on the week behind Todd Gurley. But see, Awesome's like a game theorist, so and also I know he got burned because he didn't play enough James Conner in week 1. So he's holding this grudge into week 2. But no, I think it's really interesting to consider because look, James Conner to me is in like bright green lights. And sometimes, when a dude is in bright green lights, it's almost like it's almost like a red flag. I mean, a good example just in real football is this Chargers-Bills game. Okay, so we're in bright green lights. Like the Bills are the worst team ever. The Chargers are, kind of coming off this loss. They're very talented, but they're coming off this loss. They do score a lot of points, but that now they're going to Buffalo, and I picked the Bills to cover. In my column, and I got a bunch of feedback like, what are you thinking? Are you crazy? The Bills just lost 47-3. The Chargers are gonna smoke them. Well, if you put like into context, like the Chargers are going from friggin' LA to Buffalo. Number 1, number 2, the Chargers have like a consistent year over year tendency to play below expectations. Number 3, the Chargers are without Joey Bosa. They're without Corey Legit, 2 of their best defensive linemen. And the Bills still have LaShawn McCoy. And look, the Chargers are way better than the Bills. But when we see like the public or just these green lights flashing so much, we really can get a little bit of a contrarian edge if we fade that.
Yeah, and I think too, in particular, again, with the ownership projections that we had come out this morning for Awesemo.com premium members, Brown and Conner are both in the top 3 owned players currently based on the first projection that we're putting out there. So, to me, like that makes Alex, that fits the Alex theme right away, that if a guy's that highly owned, you can find that value somewhere else and at least get off the beaten path. But I think you're right. Like in real light, 36 touches in week 1 is insane. And going into a matchup versus a team that got hemorrhaged on the ground and gave up 13 targets to Melvin Gordon last week, it does seem like it fits James Conner too well. And I think that's one thing with NFL too, where there are guys you can't afford to fade sometimes. And I think Connor might be at that spot with his price kind of being cheap enough to get in there and different enough than the Kamaras and the Gurleys of the world.
Well, here's the pivot is I know Tevin Coleman is going to get increased workload. He's not going to get as big a workload as Connor, but he's considerably cheaper. I'm sure he'll also be really high owned, but that might be a play I make because I just see a little bit more value just because of the price differential.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense, and I could see the logic there. I worry a little bit about Carolina's defense. I mean, to me, I don't think Coleman's going to get the volume. Not that Elliott had his most volume-heavy week last week, but Elliott's a better back who they kind of limited. And I think expecting Coleman to come in and have as big of a day as like Connor did last week at the same price, I don't think is going to happen. That's sort of my concern. Connor is, to me, seems like an elite spot plus elite touches, and that's hard for me to fade. Evan, what are you doing? Give us your contrarian take. You're the guest here, so we want to make you have to put one too spicy out. But that's what the people demand from this show.
Yeah,
Your spiciest take.
I have the ugliest, grossest old man takes. Total Al Smith copy off takes. First one is that Ben Watson. I love him at home against the Browns. I think that. Well, first of all, he played 80% of the snaps in week 1. He ran the 8th most routes of any tight end in the NFL. He did only see 4 targets, but, Drew Brees knows him. And I mean, he was a top 8 fantasy tight end in 2015 with Drew Brees, which is just absurd to think about. He's so freaking old, but he can still run. He can still run. I swear to you, he was pretty fast. Josh Hermsmeyer does, game speed charts from Next Gen Stats, which is just an invaluable tool. And Ben Watson can still run a little bit. And he's facing the Browns. And, the Browns are a team that plays 3 linebackers on passing downs. And so almost every team in the NFL plays 2 linebackers on passing downs and inserts a defensive back. But the Browns love to play 3. Because Greg Williams thinks that he knows more than the modern NFL. And they also station their free safety about 30 yards back in punt return alignment. So what that does, when you have 3 linebackers and a free safety that's just, you're essentially playing against a 10-man defense, the tight end is just going to have massive gaps and zones to be able to run into. No one's going to be covering Ben Watson. Literally, he's not going to be covered. Okay. He's old. Okay, but he's going to be out there a lot, and he's cheap, and no one's going to want to play him for good reason. So I really like Ben Watson. I'm going to try to think of another guy. Deshaun Watson, I really like him to bounce back. He's not that gross though. I'm trying to think of a really, really gross play here. One guy I haven't heard anything about all week is Nelson Aguilar. The only guy that I heard mention him was Tuttle, actually. And Tuttle is one of the sharpest dudes that I talk to every single week. So, and I love Aguilar. Okay, I'm obsessed with Aguilar. They used him like Keenan Allen in week 1. He got tackled at the end of every catch when he was playing against the Falcons. They have the fastest linebacker core in the NFL. Great tacklers. So he only had 33 yards on 8 catches. But he tied Zach Ertz for the team lead in targets. They used him as a passer. They used him as a runner. They used him as a runner last year too, by the way. And last year, he also led the Eagles in red zone targets and targets inside the 10. Let's look at the Buccaneers pass defense right now. It is in friggin' shambles. They lost their slot corner, Vernon Hargreaves, to injured reserve. Brent Grimes, their best cornerback, is not going to play in this game. Carlton Davis, their other outside cornerback, got beat so badly that he got benched last week. They have to bring him back. They have to use Ryan Smith, who is just god awful on the outside, and they have to start MJ Stewart, a rookie out of North Carolina, late 3rd round pick, as their slot corner. Their and their strong safety is Chris Conti, who, I love Chris Conti. I love when Chris Conti's in the game, because you'll see like dudes like, ripping bombs downfield, and then Chris Conti will be like, the guy who's like kind of like in trail coverage, like 10 yards behind. Like when they score the touchdown, you can see Chris Conti like creep into the picture. Chris Conti is my favorite safety in the NFL, because he's always behind the touchdown bombs. So this is, I love this, attacking this Tampa Bay defense, and Nelson Aguilar is the guy that I want to attack it with. I do like Zach Ertz. I do like Mike Wallace even, as like a real dart throw sleeper. But, if you're looking for a guy who could rack up a ton of yards and just have a friggin' monster game, it's Nelson Aguilar.
So actually, that was going to be one of my spicy takes for the day too. I think the Foles, Aguilar, Ertz kind of triumvirate there. It's actually a pretty interesting play overall in that matchup. I mean, we've seen Tampa Bay, again, obviously go up and down the field last week, and not trying to cloud that. But last year too, they were horrendous versus the pass. They were one of the worst teams in terms of yardage allowed. And again, as Evan just mentioned, a ton of injuries as well. That don't benefit them. And this is a Philly team who will run up the score, who will throw on you. I think they need to build some confidence for Foles as well, because we don't know when Carson Wentz is going to get back in there. So I think it's actually a pretty interesting spot for those guys who are getting a ton of targets versus a defense that really cannot stop anything, it seems. I don't see that changing at any time soon.
The two guys that Foles, and if you're looking back to last season, because, we have a decent sample now on Foles. It's like, 6 or 7 games. The guys that he has just targeted the crap out of are Ertz and Aguilar. And Aguilar. So I think those guys are bankable plays that showed in week 1. I mean, Ertz didn't have a big game in terms of like final production, but he had 10 targets. Anytime that you get a tight end who's getting friggin' 10 targets, that's a really good situation to put yourself in. And Nelson Aguilar with the 10 targets, the passing attempt and the rushing attempt, these are not easy situations to find across the board.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And Ertz, too, I think, the Sproles not being active for the game, too, you're going to want somebody else to check down. And I think both Ertz and Aguilar fit that profile of being a pretty good safety valve and a guy who Foles has the trust for. Alex, you have some pretty decent grades for Philly as well in the rankings this week on awesemo.com. What are your thoughts on Philly going into this matchup at Tampa Bay?
Yeah, I think they're pretty good like contrarian plays, because they're going to be very low owned. We have Foles projected for 1.5% ownership. And the reason why is the optimizer is going to land you on a lot of different quarterbacks before him, but that doesn't mean he's not a good play. I think that having some combination of Aguilar, Ertz, and Wallace, that could definitely be a good strategy to kind of differentiate from the field and have a good shot at winning something big.
And Ertz, too, does serve as a pretty good pivot off of George Kittle, who we have as being the highest projected tight end and one of the highest projected guys as well. He's a great play to me, but I do think Ertz, has proven it time and time again, whereas Kittle is still a younger player.
Yes, man, I wish that Kittle wasn't going to be so high owned this week, because I love him, I love him so much. Hopefully people are just, it's just like 30% and not like 70%, I guess.
Evan, if you want an Awesemo premium membership, I think we can hook you up, but we do have them projected for a little less than 30, actually under 20 right now.
Okay.
Still a lot by NFL standards.
Great.
But yeah, I think Kittle, actually, I'll give one of my other takes as well. Kittle, and I think Jared Cook is also in a pretty good spot. And I know people are thinking that's a mirage play, but boy, that guy was an important part of that offense. It's a risk-averse offense. They clearly showed they don't want to get creamed, and Denver will cream them if they can. But it also happens to be that Denver's one weakness has been versus the tight end. And they have given up long bomb touchdowns as well, both on the catch and run and just deep plays. I think that all fits Cook's profile as well. And I think Cook is another guy who's a pretty good pivot to George Kittle.
Couldn't agree more. And, what did Denver do in week 1? They gave up 4 for 105 and a touchdown to Will Dissly. Okay. Do you know who Will Dissly is? Awesemo, do you know who Will Dissly is?
No.
I actually did talk about him in our tight ends preview, Evan, so I don't want to take too much tout credit, but then he got bumped off the starting job and I was off of him. I thought it was going to be Vanette, but Dissly they loved in the preseason the entire time.
Okay. He came out of Washington. I remember the first time that I ever heard about him was kind of early in the offseason, Mike Mayock was talking about him. He's, an NFL draft guy, and I love Mike Mayock. But he was talking about Will Dissly. He's like, best blocking tight end in this draft. Will Dissly out of Washington, used to play defensive line. So I was like, all right, well, I don't really care about blocking tight ends, but I'll definitely look into this guy. He had 25 catches in his entire college career. He scored 3 touchdowns in his entire college career. He ran a 4.87 40. Okay, 4.87 40. Great blocker. Can't run a lick, but he got into the open field against Denver. Jared Cook runs like a friggin' wideout. He ran 4.5 flat coming out of college, and he's still just as fast. John Gruden, even in the offseason, was like, I can't believe how fast Jared Cook is. I'm like, man, you old man, have you watched tape on Jared Cook? Like, come on, this is what he does. He's not good in a lot of other areas, but he can definitely run. Anyways, you're right. The weakness of the Denver defense is against tight ends, and Jared Cook can absolutely run. He runs like a wide receiver, and he had 12 targets in week 1. That's very important, man. Those usage numbers are very important.
Yeah, especially now that we know the Gruden offense a little better. I mean, I think there's been some mystery around it. Obviously, he talked about the commitment to the run, but really the commitment was more to risk aversion. And I get that logic from a guy coming from a different era of football. But if that benefits Cook, and Cook looks like the real deal. He looked like the real deal last year too. Honestly, he just didn't get as much volume. So if he's getting anywhere between 8 and 12 touches, I think that's our targets. That's a fantastic spot for him. Alex, give us one more of your takes, your second spiciest take. So we already got the spiciest one. So now the heat's come down a little. We can go back to the well.
Well, if we're talking tight ends, I think I'm seeing Gronk at 6.6% ownership. And I know Jacksonville has a pretty stout pass defense, but I mean, Gronk is just by far the best tight end on the slate overall. And although I wouldn't project him to have as good a game as his average, I mean, I think that at 7% ownership, you got to really consider that over, especially because there's great value guys on the slate as well, like Tevin Coleman, and one of my favorite plays, Pierre Garcon.
Ooh, I like that. Why Pierre and not Dante Pettis, who's another guy who we expect to be pretty popular, who's much cheaper?
So that's where I'll have to go to Evan because I don't know much about Dante Pettis. I mean, Garcon is kind of a known quantity, and I'm pretty bullish about Garoppolo's chances versus the Lions in passing. The one hesitation I have is last night I was hanging out. Some of my girlfriend's friends were with her, and one of them was from San Francisco. And she kept talking about how attractive Jimmy Garoppolo was. And, come on, who cares? And plus, they're playing the Lions, who also have an attractive quarterback. And then she was like, "Oh, let me Google him." And then they're talking shit about Matt Stafford. I'm like, "That's my homie."
Yeah.
But despite all that, I think I still am going to roster Jimmy G, as she was calling him.
Wait, Alex, did you slide girlfriend in there? You haven't mentioned that before on one of the content pieces. Is that new?
Well, we've been dating since February, so it's a while.
Okay.
One of the DraftKings events, so some of you guys might have met her.
Oh, young love for Alex. Good. Well, we all support that here. Obviously, Osmo about picks, but really more than that, about love and committed relationships. And that's what we care about. Glad you found her at the right price. Now she's only on the rise. What do you think about that take, Evan?
About
Dante Pettis.
Yeah, he said a lot. I mean, he said a lot. Yeah.
What do you think about the girlfriend take?
He's my Garcon, girlfriend's friends influencing his ownership. I mean, he lost me there. I love Dante Pettis. I mean, so I'm big into preseason, and Dante Pettis balled in the preseason. I'm big into college prospects evaluation. One of the guys that I respect the most is Matt Waldman of Football Guys. And he had Dante Pettis as the #1 receiver in this draft class.
Wow.
Kyle Shanahan echoed that love for Dante Pettis by trading up for him at number 44 overall. They have used him at every position in the wide receiver corps. So they've used him at X, Z, and slot, and that really suits him. One thing that some of the best analytics, like draft prospects guys, like on RotoViz, have discussed and proven is that wide receivers who have a history of return game domination at the college level have higher hit rates in the NFL. And you can look at like Antonio Brown. So he was like a 6th-round pick out of Central Michigan. He was an unbelievable return guy at Central Michigan, but he had a bad combine, so people thought he was a bad athlete. But dude, if you just go and look at his return game production, it's like this dude is like making people miss with the ball in his hands with 11 guys coming at him. He is, juking people out of their shoes. So you know what? Let's maybe not overweight the combine. The same deal with Jarvis Landry. Had a terrible combine, is a great returner still to this day. Tyreek Hill, great returner. Dez Bryant was an unbelievable return man at Oklahoma State. Keenan Allen was an unbelievable return man early in his career at Cal. Stephon Diggs was an unbelievable return man at Maryland. Emmanuel Sanders at SMU, great return man. Nelson Aguilar even returned against or at USC and was a great return guy. So, all these guys that they're just good with the ball in their hands, and that's the way that you can kind of understand that. And I love that about Dante Pettis. Is he a lock this week? Of course not, but he's minimum price on FanDuel. The issue that I have on FanDuel with getting him in is that there's so much good value that I don't think I'm going to end up playing him in cash. I would prefer to play him in cash, honestly, in a normal week, but it's like it's hard to even make it work with him. But I absolutely love him. I think last week Garcon, the Vikings stuck Xavier Rhodes on him, and this week I think that the Lions will stick Darius Slay on him. As we talked about earlier, I don't want to get too involved in the cornerback wide receiver matchups, but I do see kind of a clear path here for Dante Pettis to get 6 or 7 targets, and he has big time playmaking ability.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I liked Garcon a lot last year. I had him in both season long and DFS week to week a couple of times before he got hurt. And he was getting a lot of targets before they traded for Jimmy. And I don't think that he and Jimmy Garoppolo have established that rapport. Maybe his girlfriends don't think Jimmy's handsome enough. That's hard to say the reason why. But for Pierre, I do think he's going to get the volume. But Pettis, I think they've shown a really good chemistry. I mean, Pettis had some amazing catches. I didn't know the return thing. That's really interesting to think about. But you can kind of see it with the way he plays and how he gets in space and how he can kind of accomplish things. So I think that does make sense. And I think Kittle, too, is still a great play. It's hard to fade him, even though he's going to be highly owned. But I think he and Pettis are going to draw a ton of targets just because they have to pass it. And the Lions are not going to stop a single thing. I mean, there's just not a chance.
I think Garoppolo is going to drop bombs on the Lions this week. I mean, the way that the Lions showed in that home game in week 1 against the friggin' Jets was pathetic. And now they have to go all the way out to San Francisco, facing a team that the 49ers easily could have beat the Vikings in Minnesota last week. They just left a lot of opportunities on the table. I think this game could be a shootout, though. I really like kind of game stacking this one. There are a lot of games that you can game stack this week, like the Steelers, the Chiefs, the Falcons and the Panthers. I think are always kind of in that conversation. The Saints and the Browns even. I think that this one might be the least stacked, outside of Kittle. But I did like to hear that ownership projection less than 30% for George Kittle.
Yeah, and again, we do have a promo code for that. If you want to check out Awesemo.com Premium, promo code Contrary will get you 1 week free, so you could check out all of Awesemo's grades, ownership projections, all of that, as well as the article that he puts out tomorrow, which for premium members usually. So promo code Contrary, go check that out. I think the Niners are in a good spot. I'm with you on that game stack as well. I think, Stafford was really bad last week. I worry. I think, here's a non-contrarian viewpoint. Matt Patricia is a terrible coach, and I don't think should have gotten hired there. I think I don't get how you got that job after what the Patriots defense was last year. That blows my mind. And you can see it that, all the headlines already coming out in Detroit about people, being unhappy with rules and his way he manages things. It just seems like it's going to be a bad situation for them and one that Garoppolo can throw all over.
Early returns are bad. Let's get Osimo talking about, let's pick his brain about something.
All right. Well, do you have one more question? Actually, let's get some user questions in, guys. If you have questions for Evan or Alex, but whoever, it's not a popularity contest, whoever you want to ask, or both. If you want to get them both in the mix, that's fine.
No, we need to
drop
get
it in the chat now.
Osimo talking. We need to pick his brain and get smarter. Not me.
True. Alex, I guess what do you feel like Evan might do wrong with his process that you don't necessarily buy into as much? We kind of talked about it at a high level, but what's something that you haven't looked at where you're like, you know what, I'm never going to look at that. That doesn't work for me.
Evan's like a really smart football guy. Most of the things he's saying are really great. Like I might have to look into Dante Pettis more if he's next Antonio Brown, right?
Just one and the same, those two guys.
The one thing I'd caution Evan against is when you're trying to outsmart Vegas. So I mentioned something about the point totals. It's kind of like if you're like smart enough to outsmart those, then you can make a fortune sports betting. Like there's no need to even play DFS.
Yeah, that came up with the Brown Saints thing. I totally, and even as I was saying it, I kind of cringed because I know exactly what you're talking about. But yeah, is there anything else? That was great.
That was the only thing I can think of.
Alex just loves everybody and all of their processes as long as you're not too terrible at this whole game that we have. He just likes trying. That's all he cares about. Is most of Osmo's exposure on the KC Pitt game, or is there another game you like more? I guess which game, if you were to stack a game on both sides, which would be the one you would go with, Alex?
Well, the KC Pitt game is definitely gonna be popular tomorrow. Well, some teams I'm interested. Like I think it's always a good strategy to stack at least one player from the opposite side of your quarterback. So the trouble is some of my highest ranked quarterbacks aren't that easy to stack against. So like with Jimmy Garoppolo, you're gonna have to pick Golden Tate or Marvin Jones, not great value plays. And then I have to agree with Evan. I like Deshaun Watson's chances this week. But then you're picking from Tennessee receivers like Rashard Matthews and Corey Davis, and they're also not really great plays. But you're going to have to kind of swallow that and pick some guys that aren't that good from the opposing team because they're going to have to put up some points if both passing offenses are going to work.
I think Deion Lewis is a guy there to consider as part of that if you are trying to run it back the other way. Given the amount of touches he got, he really outsnapped Derrick Henry too, and it seems like the trust is already there. So I think that I'm with you. I think that game actually could be a sneaky stack. I'm not sure about the pace of play, but boy, it does seem like Watson should be able to get back on track in that spot. I think I have to ask this question because it's from Tom. So I think I gotta go to him. He's an important guy here in our company. How do you deal with small sample sizes early in the season? Are you still using last year's stats? I guess that question goes for both of you guys.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking at last year's stats. The trouble is, I think Evan would be better at this than me. Is I'm trying to kind of guess the context. So if I'm trying to judge the strength of a defense, and I'm not spending as much time as Evan kind of researching like all the personnel changes. So I'm using a lot of data that might be better off kind of coming up with estimates instead of using full data. But it's the best I have right now, so that's what I'm rolling with. Evan, how do you kind of figure out with personnel changes which teams are going to be better or worse?
Yeah, so we got the opportunity to hang out. Was it last Monday? And that was when Osimo, I took a 4-1 lead on him in ping pong, and then he beat me 11-6. And it was, he's good. I mean, he's got really good spin on the ball. He's got
getting like aggressive serves and just slamming it on you.
Well, like I'm like a power player, so when you get like a spinner against like a power player, like I end up just smashing balls into the net, and it's not good. Anyways, what were we talking about? I'm sorry.
I think we were talking about the embarrassments that Alex has laid on you at various bar events.
Whoa, 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 whoa! No, that was one game. Okay, we're not going to bring up the other ones because out of respect for Alex's brand. Um,
No, just a stat sample size, Evan, is what we were talking about.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely using like just a general idea of how teams performed last year, and then adjusting for personnel changes and just making best possible estimate. And also adjusting for injuries. There are guys that are key guys that if a team is missing them, it may make the matchup easier or harder. But Alex doesn't even go. He doesn't go that hard into specific personnel, yet he still has success. I think that the most interesting conversation that Alex and I had on Monday was um, how Alex thinks that the early part of the year is hard, maybe the hardest, because he doesn't have data on teams. And I think that the early part of the year is the easiest, because I think that I, have a better grasp on the teams than most people. But as the season progresses, because I don't rely on algorithms and models necessarily to formulate everything that I do. I may become stubborn and set in things that occurred in the first 3 weeks, especially about things that I get wrong early on. And I have a tendency to maybe sometimes overcorrect. Like one thing that I've really gotten into the past couple of years is learning about like just psychological biases, and like overcorrection can be one for me, especially when I'm wrong about a team for like 3 straight weeks in weeks 1 through 3. I have a tendency to like overcorrect in week 7 and like continue it into like week 11, whereas Osimo, like relying on data, he can become just like a model or whatever. He can become that can actually make him smarter. Whereas I kind of get dumber, and my stubbornness can work against me.
Yeah, I'm actually with you on that. I've noticed too the first couple of weeks of pretty much each sport really. And now that I'm kind of doing this full time and obviously able to invest the time in the research as a full time job and do the kind of prep that Alex and Tom have given me, the first couple of weeks are the toughest because it's just a small sample size, and a lot of the people who are the top DFS players, I think, aren't doing that level of research that you might do, especially. I mean, definitely not that level, but I think a lot of them, they're looking more kind of stat agnostically, more preseason agnostically. It's more carrying over the things that you know and are provable. And that's why I think I agree. The advantage is really there for kind of anybody who's doing the work and putting the elbow grease in those first couple weeks of the year. What does Osmo prefer to play, cash or GPP? That's an easy one for you, Alex.
Well, my advice to everyone is play the worst players you can find. You're gonna have the most success. I think that most casual players gravitate towards contests that have the high first place prizes. So I recommend stuff like the for NFL is easy. You just enter a tournament with 100,000 people, and like 90,000 of them aren't gonna be that good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, especially with football, it's a lot of casual people just throwing lineups in. So the hope is if you're using the products that Alex gives you, and if you're a premium member especially, to kind of get ahead of the field there. People asking about, we didn't talk much about this game. People ask about Devin Funchess and how he's affected by no Greg Olsen. I think Funchess's targets were substantially up with Olsen out. Obviously, I thought he was a good play coming into the year. I think he's only gotten better. How do you feel about him this week, Alex, going into Atlanta?
I'm not like super high on the Panthers, I guess, because well, if I had to roster one guy, it would be Christian McCaffrey. It's because he's getting a ton of work in the passing game and getting his share in the rushing game. But as far as wide receivers, I just don't see like a ton of offensive potential in the game. So I'm not gonna really like chase him just because of a good workload.
Any thoughts on Funchess and the Panthers pass game, Evan?
Awesome, always chasing the chalk, I do kind of like Funchess. He's 6'4", 232. Some people thought he should play tight end in the NFL. He's only 7 months older than Calvin Ridley, the Falcons' first-round pick this year.
Oh, really?
So he came out of Michigan like crazy young, just wasn't ready to play, but he's gotten better every year. He had a breakout year last year. This is now his contract year, and that's a bunch of noise that Osimo is probably rolling his eyes at, but. But what Osimo should care about and likely does is that his opportunity share has increased because last year with Greg Olsen out over the final 5 games, Devin Funchess averaged almost 8 targets per game, almost 80 yards per game, scored 4 touchdowns in those 5 games. And he had 2 decent games against the Falcons. The Falcons do have a really good cornerback unit, but they lost Deion Jones, which really benefits Osimo's boy Christian McCaffrey, and then Keanu Neal, both to essentially season-ending injuries. They're hopeful that Deion Jones will come back, but Keanu Neal is out for the year. I like Devin Funchess. I think that I'm going to end up not playing a terribly big amount of him, but man, he absolutely has 6 for 80 and a touchdown squarely within his potential range of outcomes.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think the red zone targets too were interesting for him last year, even with Olsen on the field for half of the year. He was getting targeted a lot there. And I'm with you. I think he is kind of like an NBA player. He came in early. He's kind of grown into the role. This is his first full year being the number 1 receiver, and I think this is a really good spot for him to get on the board with those injuries. We got 2 minutes left, guys. So if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. We'll try to hit them. Let's go around the board here. Best contrarian defense on DK. For me, that'd probably be the Broncos. Alex, what do you think?
I'm pulling it up right now. Give me a second here.
Sure.
I will go with Saints against the Browns.
Oh, I don't like that. Evan.
What?
I have a lot of Browns. I'm buying fully into the Browns. I think Tyrod's is.
Well, that's fine. Tyrod was the QB7 last week, but he took 7 sacks. Okay, so we can all get ours.
I just want no pass rush on Tyrod. Tyrod gets sacked more than any QB on the slate. Just keep it easy on him. If the Saints can't generate a rush, Tyrod can do whatever he wants. That's my hope. Alex, what'd you land on?
Sorry, I'm lagging here, but what I remember from my crunches is that I think there's some really great value defenses this week. So I'm probably gonna punt defense in a lot of lineups. Okay, I think I got it here.
He just doesn't want to give away plays. That's all.
Well, no, one of the ones I like is the Titans versus Houston. Because they're only 2,400. And I also like Houston, but I think that Deshaun Watson, let's see what I got here. Yeah, I have him projected to throw more than average picks. The Houston team total is only 23. At the same time, I like Watson, so I'm not going to have him in the same lineup, obviously, but I'm probably going to have exposure to both sides of that.
I know that this doesn't feel comfortable for a lot of people, but it is very possible that an offensive player can have a big game and the defense can also have a big game. And people say it's bad correlation. I mean, I remember last year there was a week where I had or no, it wasn't last year, it was the year before. One of my biggest weeks, I had Vikings defense and David Johnson. And I was just like, I can't pass this up because I think I'm going to get, 5 or 6 sacks. I think I might get, a return touchdown from the Vikings. And I think that even if the Vikings dominate, David Johnson is getting 20 plus touches every single game. He could get 9 catches, and they both went off in the same game. It's not that crazy to think that could happen. With the Titans, they're getting back. Well, Derek Morgan, their outside linebacker, was limited last week. They're getting back Harold Landry, who's one of the best pass rushing rookies this year. They are playing at home. The Texans' offensive line is the worst in the NFL by like a distance. Like there's 31 offensive lines in the NFL, and there's a gap, and then there's the Texans. So I like that. I like that idea that the Titans defense could come alive this week. I wanted to ask Osimo about this though, like because for my cash lineup, right now I have as my running backs, and this is on FanDuel, I have James Conner, Adrian Peterson, and Tevin Coleman, and I'm really just targeting touchdowns. But I'm like fading Gurley and Kamara, and that's terrifying. But I am getting, Ben and AB, and I'm playing Kittle. Like, what do you think about like fading these running backs, especially in cash, like Gurley and Kamara, who are in just absolute optimal situations because there's more value, down the line with Adrian Peterson, Tevin Coleman, and James Conner.
Yeah, I think that that could be a really smart roster construction on FanDuel. Because Tevin Coleman is so cheap. I think Kamara still should be a consideration. You can play up to 3 running backs, which is nice. One other guy I like a lot on FanDuel is Dalvin Cook at 6,500. I think that versus Green Bay, he's gonna get too much workload to really ignore.
All right, so let's wrap this up because Evan's got to go about his day. Alex does as well, and I mean I do too, but I'm just trying to be considerate of everybody else. But let's give our most contrarian pick for the top running backs, I guess. But maybe not the most contrarian. Which running back amongst the top guys? We all know who the top guys are. Which is the one who fails this week? Let's make that pick. I'm gonna go Alvin Kamara just because I like Gurley a little more, and Kamara's the most expensive. So I would be most willing to fade him, even though I'm still not fading him.
I'll go with James Conner. I think he's still a great value, but I'm not convinced he's a better value than some of the other guys.
All right, Evan, who are you leaving off?
Melvin Gordon at Buffalo. I haven't even heard that much buzz about him. I've heard like a decent amount of buzz about him, so I don't know that he's even. There's just a lot of good running back plays this week. Is my issue. I guess that he would be the one that I'm most scared of because I feel like the Chargers, and this is like almost a total feel thing. I think that the Chargers are just going to go to Buffalo and underachieve like they always do. Bills keep the game close, maybe even pull out the upset. And LaShawn McCoy has a decent game, and Melvin Gordon does not.
There you go. Melvin Gordon, also another guy projected to be one of the top owned running backs this week, over 20% ownership on our premium projections on Osmo.com. Those will update throughout the week, though. So again, get the trial membership with promo code Contrary to get in for 1 free week. Get all the ownership projections, Osmo's rankings, and his premium article tomorrow, which will be coming out before the slate. And Evan, thank you so much for joining us at Evan Silva on Twitter. Any parting words for the folks before you go do all the things you do so great?
No, this was an awesome opportunity. Thank you so much for having me, guys, and hopefully we get an opportunity to do it again.
Cool. And Alex, anything for the people before we go? Of course, follow Alex at OsmoDFS on Twitter and Instagram to get his content. But Alex, what do you want to say to the fine folks before we part this week?
First of all, thanks, Evan. Definitely one of the biggest names in football, so it's an honor being on the show with you. And thanks, everyone, for watching. I hope you guys picked up some good nuggets here, and let us know what you think.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Throw us a like. Follow at Evan Silva. Follow at OsmoDFS. Follow at Chris Spags, too, because I like attention. And we'll see you guys again soon with another On the Contrary. Thanks, guys.